Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, the Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of the AC Trailblazers podcast, where we interview the most amazing founders of the AC. Today with us, it's David Alpert. He's the CEO and co-founder of Geopogo, an AC focused 3D technology company based in Berkeley, California. He's an award-winning architect turned product builder. David leads a team blending Unreal Engine, AR, VR, and AI to deliver Geopogo Cities, a real-time geospatial visualization platform that drops Revit, SketchUp, Rhino, ArchiCAD, and other models into rich city-scale context for design reviews and stakeholder presentations. His work pushes AEC towards faster, more visual design making with being compatible, client-ready experiences from desktop to immersive devices. Dave, welcome to the show.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Did I miss something uh, from your bio?
Oh, no, that's fine. I can fill in.
Okay. Um, I'm just curious how the hell ended up creating something like Geopogo. So before we get into that, how you ended up being a founder? How you ended up going from an architect to an actual tech founder?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, the answer to those two questions is the same because this is my being a tech founder, and Geopogo is the only technology company I've ever endeavored to found. So,
No, but I mean, how do you went from architecture, which is not the
right.
same?
Yeah. How about? So, the way I went from architecture to this was that, of course, architecture makes me fascinated about physical places. My daughter was living and working in Madrid. And this was like early days of Google Street View around the world. And so I was writing letters to her at her address. So I thought, well, maybe I can find it on Google Street View. And I was there. I couldn't believe it. I was in front of her building in Madrid. And so I was just thrilled. But at the same time, I was immediately frustrated because I was restricted to those station points they put in the street. And I wanted to go into the building. I wanted to go around the building. I wanted to be able to fly up above and see what else was around it. And of course, I couldn't do those things. As time goes on, since then, those things have been developed. But at that time, that was all you could do. And so I was not in the mindset yet of finding solutions to things that I imagined. But in my dreams, I went to finding a solution because I was planning a walking tour based on something I had studied in architecture school at UC Berkeley. And this particular thing is studied in many architecture schools. It's called the NOLI, Nooli map of Rome. It was done in 1748 by an architect and surveyor. And the way he depicted the city of Rome in his map was completely innovative and new. So, I mean, how could it be innovative and new? People have been doing maps of cities forever. So, what he did is he took the typical white and black figure ground, where the white is the ground, and that's the outside environment, the streets and piazzas. And then the black is the solid built environment. And he tweaked that so that he extended the white space of the public exterior into the semi-public interiors. So instead of seeing the Pantheon as a solid block that you couldn't penetrate, it suddenly became like an extension of the street with a colonnade inside around the edges, that type of thing. Um, so that combined in my mind, in my dream, to this vision of how there could be a digital virtual world, which is basically a digital twin of the real world that then could inform things that you do in the real world. That was like I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I never did that before, like sitting straight up. And I have an idea. I woke wife up. We talked about it for a couple hours, and then I started the company. Maybe that's kind of a long answer, but that's
You
how it happened.
you
It's like it hit me like
yeah.
a cartoon of a piano falling on someone from the window up above in New York City. And I was compelled. So now what people in technology want to hear is that you identified a problem and that you were solving that problem. Well, the practice of architectural design is full of problems. There's no problem finding problems. What I found was an opportunity, and that opportunity to have a digital twin provides a means of addressing the problem of just the inefficiency of the design and construction process, where almost 10% of the construction budget is wasted on what's called rework, where you have to redo things that have already been built before you can deliver the project. Now, some of that rework might be because of random things which have nothing to do with how well the design has been conceived. But a lot of it, and most clients would say most of it, has to do with simple misunderstandings about what the heck is the design? What is this architect designing for me? And of course, clients have picked an architect who they trust. And so they, they kind of trust that the architect is getting what they need and that that's what the design is going to address. But there can be misunderstandings along the way. And I'd just like to give you one example of something like this so you can understand.
Sure,
So
sure. Go ahead.
my team was approached by a building contractor who was working with a huge tech company called Meta. And they were designing a technically focused facility for them here in the Bay Area. And Meta had already reviewed the construction drawings and signed off on them. This is going to be perfect. This is the solution to our needs. And the contractor decided they were going to wow this tech client by offering them an augmented reality tour of the facility before it was built. So the client met out on the site with the contractor and us. They started looking at everything through augmented reality, and they discovered that this was not what they needed. This thing that they'd signed off on was not what they wanted. So, right there that afternoon, they made all the changes because they had their project managers on the app, all the design changes that needed to be made before anything started construction. And we asked the construction manager afterwards, how much did you save? And he said, well, we saved $250,000, which was 10% of our interior fit out cost. So that kind of was a proof point that this is what you could do. So it started out as just an inspiration, found a very practical application.
That's so interesting. And I mean, the value it's obvious, right? Like the more data and the more realistic the data is, the better the design is going to be, right? Like I think there is no discussion there, right? And it's even a little bit absurd that with all the data that we have nowadays, there are a lot of firms that are still designing out of a 2D background and not like a or a really crappy 3D background and not a really detailed 3D background as it is, right?
Right.
Um, but I have seen architects. I'm an architect, so I can say it. And we make this. We make sometimes we make these kind of mistakes, and architects designing right a building with the wrong 3D background, with a building
Oh,
that is not
oh,
there
wait,
anymore.
wait.
So
Contact isn't correct.
and
Yep.
this is common, right? Like many going through the web and they take a snapshot of a some, we're not gonna say names, but somebody else. It's the wrong background. So you might be designing based on the shadow of another building or based on the shape. But then after you build it, you realize that building is there not there anymore. It's just insane.
Right. Or maybe you didn't take enough pictures and there's something you don't want to
Absolutely.
show. So, of course, you started out, I think, by talking about Geopogo Cities, what that is. And that's our big product that we're promoting right now. But what the story was that I was talking about was an earlier product that we still offer, which converts BIM files like Revit into 3D models, which are both size on site.
Hmm.
So if you start with that, you've got your model as an overlay through the glasses that you're looking, and it's not virtual reality, it's augmented reality. You see everything that's there. There's no mistaking anything. You're not recreating the background in any way. You're just laying your design on top of what exists. So,
Yeah, but even then, it's about having the information displayed on the right way,
yeah,
because the client might not understand a blueprint, or they might understand it, but they might not imagine to the full extent, what is what you can get with AR or VR, right?
right, right. But you mentioned something there. I think you said the plan. See the plan
Yeah,
project. Okay, well, I mean, a plan is a little bit of an abstraction, and people aren't, you see the outline, the
true.
rectangular outline of a cabinet with a circle on it. And we know that is a cabinet and sink. But somebody else looking at that is like, what is this abstraction? And you can tell them, but they can't necessarily quite visualize it. And that's a very simple thing. A lot of things which are shown on architecture drawings are much more complicated than that. So I would say that when you are literally showing a full size model of something that you're in that's well detailed, and it's on top of what already exists. And if there's a window, say in the model, that window view corresponds, I mean, it's what you would really see. There's no abstraction to that because you're seeing what you would really see, both in terms of interior and exterior views. Now, some people would think of 3D visualization as being primarily for presentation. It's something that you're using in order to convey ideas, sort of like that example of the Meta project. The architect was conveying what the design was, and they were conveying it better with the 3D model than they had with the drawings. But of course, that is a tiny part of the design process. Most of the design process is in crafting the design. So, as architects, we're trained both because I think our natural aptitude that draws us to architecture in terms of spatial intelligence, but also in terms of doing it over and over again through school. And then while we're working, we're trained to visualize things in 3D better than the average person. So we think as architects that we don't need any kind of an aid. But the question is, are we designing the very best thing for that site, for that interior space or whatever? And being able to overlay it and study it before you finalize it is unquestionably a good aid. It sort of reminds me of the way a noted architect, Joseph Escherick. Are you familiar with Joseph Escherick? The Escherick Hansi Davis?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. So Joseph Escherick mostly designed houses, and he
Correct.
would not finalize the location of windows or doors until the framing was up and he was on site. And he would say, I want the window here, or I want the window there. And of course, this is not very contractor friendly, but
No, and I
this is
mean, but it's more design friendly if you don't have AR or VR, right?
right, right. And he didn't, but now we do. So you don't have to do that. And in a way, that's where Geopogo Cities comes in as a convenience. Because, first of all, most of the time you're designing, you're not on site. You're in your office someplace,
True.
at home or in your place of business. And if you're presenting to the client, you're usually not presenting on site, usually presenting in their office or something. Anyway, so you need a way to integrate the reality of the design context with the proposed design without being on site. So how do we do that? We integrate Google Maps satellite views, something called cesium, geospatial data, and Epic Games Unreal Engine graphics to recreate a digital twin of almost any place in the world. Then you can drop your model into it. And then you can be inside the model looking out, or you can be at sitting looking at the model, and you get a similar experience to what you get in augmented reality with one big advantage. With augmented reality, you're on the ground. You're not standing on some imaginary platform 20 feet in the air, but on the screen, you can be anywhere. You can be on the 30th floor as easily as you can be on the ground. You can do stuff that has until now been done with drones, but you don't need drones anymore.
I mean, if you have a digital model that is like exactly the way a digital twin, you don't need it. I mean, it's much more cheaper, faster, and efficient to just visualize it in your office than just take a drone,
Right.
do a recording of it, and do a recording over and over again. So, um, no, absolutely, absolutely, it makes total sense.
Right.
Um, I'm
Why do this?
I'm just no, no, it makes total sense, and I think that right now it's kind of a, and that's my feeling, right? That in general, this is an optional. It's a nice to have for architects, in general, but I think it's gonna be a must in the future. I think this is gonna change, and it's gonna be a must in the future. And even more, I feel it's going to happen like what happened with Beam, right? Beam started because most owners required it, right? It was a requirement from the owners. I think this is going to happen the same. It's like, hey guys, you know what? I'm not gonna approve the design until I can put my glasses and actually leave the space, because that's what happens, right? You actually leave the space and you make sure it's gonna look and it's gonna it's exactly what you expect, and not have it ready and they say, you know what? Oh, I would love to have a window here, but we're already done with the construction phase. So I think it's going to change that completely, I guess.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay.
Well, I'm an architect, so it's I love 3D.
Yeah. So this is something that exists today. And, in terms of a nice to have, that's an interesting point with architects because I talked about that 10% that the project would have cost extra if they hadn't used augmented reality, or you could do the same thing now with the Geopogo Cities on your screen. Um, that money that was saved didn't necessarily come out of the architect's pocket. It hadn't been saved. It would have come out of the owner's pocket. So it is
True.
it is very relevant that you mention Revit and BIM, because BIM was something that owners, particularly the GSA, the General Services Administration, doing the federal buildings in the US, something that they required because it was coming out of their pocket. So I think it's altogether possible that the broad adoption of the 3D visualization we now have will come from owners because they're the ones who save the most. But inasmuch as everyone involved in the project, especially the architects, wants to design the very best thing, it's in everybody's interest.
Yeah, but I mean, the one who suffers or who realizes that the design is not what they expect are the owners, and they realize that once everything is done and once they have moved into the building, and then it's like too late.
Right.
So
Or sometimes during construction, they come out on the site.
or Yeah,
no,
if you're
I
lucky,
didn't-
if you're lucky during construction, yes.
yeah, they go, I didn't agree to this. And then you go, no, you signed up on the drawing and this is just, no. So go, oh, but I didn't know what it was. So I have a thought about, okay, so when an owner comes out on the site, whether it's before it's finished or after it's finished, and they don't like something, there is a price tag for changing that. And most things they don't like, even the most functional things that are going to impact the operation, the function of that building, really, they are not changed. They just live with it. And I think even Meta wouldn't necessarily have spent that $250,000 to change all the beacons. But it wasn't costing them $250,000, so they changed it. It cost them almost nothing, just a little bit of redrawing. So we live and we work in an environment which is incredibly flawed and defective because it's just full of all these mistakes and misunderstandings that just go on into perpetuity. We've ex-
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it happens in every scale. Even have a lot of friends that they build their own houses and then they realize I think it's something typical. The outlets, location of outlets, right? In a house. It's like you're done and it's like, oh man, I wish I have an outlet here and there. And it's just so stupid because it's just drawing on a blueprint, right? It's just about doing a square. And but then if you then need to make a hole and then your wires and everything, it's expensive.
yep,
So
for sure.
with something like
Right.
VR, you can just notice it instantly. Like, hey, I want my TV here. Oh, I'm gonna have an outlet here because I don't know. I'm gonna plug something in as well, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
Still, it's just stupid.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Um, so I've talked about the process of design and the consequence to the owner and the cost and so on. But for a minute, I like to just talk about a presentation deliverable, which is renderings.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So once you have a 3D model environment, you got a digital twin of the city, you got a digital twin of your building that you can put in the city, and you have the opportunity to view that from an infinite number of perspectives, inside and outside. And you could do still captures and you can do video captures, and you can use AI to tell what it is that you want it to do. And you don't even have to lead your cursor around the model to do a fly around, which might be a little bit jerky or something. You just tell AI, I want to do a 360-degree fly around, and then I want to land on the roof, and it will do it. So the whole process of doing renderings becomes almost inconsequential. You have your model anyway to design and present. You're just capturing things from it, and you're using AI in order to guide those captures to be absolutely professional. That's something that also exists. Again, people are still doing renderings.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious. Do you uh, and this is maybe uh, just a question for the future of Geopogo. Have you considered also not only guide, the camera, but also affect the design? Like, hey, I want, I don't know, different materials or, uh,
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what you're basically looking at now is you're looking at a model which is created offline. Let me finish that. Created offline and then viewed on your screen or in your glasses. So the way that you can tweak that design in real time, so to speak, is to have your model on a laptop that then if you want to try something new with it, another material or another color or another shape or something like that, you update the model and then you send the model to view again. We're not at the point yet where in real time on one device, you can do everything you need to do. But that will come very quickly. And you can preload multiple options in terms of models. You don't just have one model on whatever you're doing. You can have 10 models loaded on your computer, and then you can toggle between them to look at different options. But if you want to change one of those options, then you have to go back to the model version that's editable and reload it in order to view it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. No, no, absolutely. Um, and given the fact that we're speaking about the future, what's the future for Geopogo? I mean, if you, I know a lot of technology is coming and a lot of changes, but what do you think is going to come for you guys in, I don't know, 3, 5, 6 years? Let's not say 10 because it's too much, but 3, 5 years, maybe it's something you can say.
Okay, well, our focus now is on adoption and on expansion into similar applications. So you can take buildings and cities as just one application where there's a spatial design. But there's also spatial designs in ships, spatial designs in aeronautics, spatial designs in cars. There's spatial designs in a lot of different senses. So one thing is to get the architects solid, right? And then the next thing is to get it adopted across different industries. We have spent years engineering this. At the same time, the technology parallel to us was also advancing because before we didn't have the Google Maps satellite views presented in tiles. We didn't have CZM geospatial data available, and we didn't have Unreal Engine 5. So when I had my dream, none of those things exist. So we have the benefit of technology advancing and our own engineering. And so we're not focusing on the technology and engineering right now. We're focusing on getting people to use what's already there that they don't even know about and that they don't use every day. Because those are two different things. You know about something, but you may not use it. You have to use it, then it counts.
I love it. I love it. And before, I think before getting into this podcast, I was trying the game you have in Steam, where you
Oh, right,
can.
right. In the cities, you can.
That's so fun, man.
Yeah, it is fun. It's kind of like Grand Theft Auto without the crime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Without the crime and so many other things, without the bad things, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's just interesting, and I do feel that this is for everybody. Like you said, it's something that we all live in cities, and we all like. Even for me, it's like even when I need to pick a hotel in Booking or Airbnb or something, for me it's just so stupid that still today you cannot even know the exact location of the room and the view, right? That in 3D, that I could like say this is the room and it's looking at this specific street, and I could say I like it or not. And it's not happening, right? With technology like yours, that could happen real fast.
Okay, so that was part of our original vision at Geopogo. It was more like the real world metaverse. And as architects, as people who care about what you're looking at and what you're experiencing, for us, it's like, why can't I view the view from my restaurant table before I make my reservation and make that part of my reservation? Why can't I get inside my hotel room and see what I would be seeing before I book that hotel room? Well, we're still not at that point, but we will be.
I mean, you have so much work ahead. Like any industry, right? In general, anything that it's physical needs to have its digital twin,
Yeah.
and almost nobody is doing it nowadays. And like the example you said about the table, I even thought about the example as well. It's just I want to know which table are you going to give me? It's going to be next to the bathroom. It's going to
Right.
be next to the door,
Sure.
and my girlfriend is going to be cold. I want to know, and there is, and unless I make 20 questions before I do the reservation. There is no way I can know, right?
Yeah. Well, that's so funny because in the restaurant, they might not want you to know because not the view from every table is not going to be what you want it to be. So once you show up with your reservation, then you have a commitment and they're going to give you the table they want. So, so
Maybe, but then maybe there is a business for them, right? You
there,
pay
there
extra.
should be.
Hey, you pay in advance.
There should be for sure. Yeah.
I mean,
Totally.
it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Like
No.
you know how it is.
Yeah, I mean, just like in an airplane where you're choosing your seat. Okay, you see that on a plan and you know whether you're going to be in the aisle, whether you're going to be in the middle, whether you're going to be on a window. Why couldn't you choose your seat in a restaurant and pay a premium for a better table? You could have
Exactly.
the economy version. You just take whatever table they give you, just like you do on an airplane, where you pay a premium to choose your table.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Like it's gonna be extra money for restaurants, and then it's gonna be a much better experience for consumers,
Yeah, I think,
right?
and that could be true for a hotel room too, because you pay like $189 for any old hotel room in a hotel. And one of them, like, has a terrible view, or it's next to the mechanical unit or something, which you could see. Um, or one of them has a great view. So they could charge more for the great view. I would pay more for great view.
Yeah, absolutely. Or it can even be, some airlines do, right? That they charge you a little bit more cents or dollars, like $2 more the closer you are to the door, right? To the entrance door. So that way you get out of the plane faster. So it can even be the same. Like, the higher you go, you pay a little bit more. And the I don't know, farther away from, I don't know, mechanical unit, you pay
Uh,
more, whatever. But I feel that there is no way you can do that, and the hotels are not doing it today because the consumers cannot actually see, the customers cannot actually see the difference, right? You cannot see. They can tell you, but you don't know how. If for example there is a hotel and there is a tower in front of it, you don't care about the height, right? Because the view is the same. But if you can see if it is a difference in view, you might pay for it.
right? I, wa- I totally agree. That's come.
Let's call Airbnb or Booking right now, Dave. They need Geopogo right now.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's cool. I mean, the stuff you can do with this, there's so much you can do, and I'm just curious on a technical level, right? You mentioned that the difficulties, I guess, it's because it's hard dealing with tiles and scales and cities and Unreal and Cesium and Google Earth. Like you see the difficulties there, or and you think the models of cities is something that they're always going to be available, or you think that eventually, like let's say, I don't know, you want to expand outside the US and you think there are cities that are not developed correctly and you will have to also develop the cities as well, or currently there are 3D models of cities across the world and they're all perfect and reflecting the current situation of every city in the world,
Okay, we have the whole world.
and it's exactly
Yeah.
as
As
it
as
is right now.
accurate as Google satellite view is.
But on a detail level, I mean, Google Earth has that, and but the detail is not as good as Cesium, for example, right?
No, cesium geospatial data anywhere. That's not a problem. There
Interesting.
are a couple of places in the world that are restricted that you might imagine, like North Korea or some parts.
Well, yeah,
Okay, okay.
those don't count.
Even now, actually, on some platforms, very recently, there are parts of Paris that you can't view their way. And this clearly because they're trying to protect against terrorism. But in general, okay, the whole world,
Yeah. In general, yeah.
now you can do it. And if you're designing a house in a cornfield, you can have that. You're not restricted to cities. It's anywhere. It's amazing.
That's pretty cool.
In a way, you could think of it as a little bit of lack of privacy, And these things exist, but they do.
I mean, lack of privacy would be if you can see the inside of houses, which
Yeah, no, you can't.
with Zillow, you actually you can a little bit with Zillow, but if it's public spaces, like I don't see the problem. I guess.
Right. No, I'm not saying that there's a problem, but it's an interesting thought because all of this information is out there and this information is available on public. Now, the interior of your house is not out there. It's not public, but we were
Sure.
talking about interiors boats. We're talking about the view outside. So what
I
you
mean,
can
it's
do is,
not there yet.
yeah, you can combine the view outside, which is public information, but we integrate it together with your own design, and your own design has its interior, and that's private. Nobody else is going to see that. Once you combine it with a city background, you're the only one who's going to see that. It's not like suddenly you're putting it into public realm.
No, it makes sense. Pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. So much. I mean, it's so interesting.
Yeah, believe in your
Um,
dreams.
yeah. I mean, you make it sound so easy. Like I had a dream and I'm doing it. But I bet there is a lot of work behind it, right?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, one of the big things I would say, since we're talking in an AEC context, is that in our work as architects, we're providing a service. We're typically not doing a product unless we're doing a prefab building or something like that. Then it's a product. But 99% of it is providing a service. And from a business standpoint, that is very different than
Hmm.
creating a product. And what we're doing in software is creating a product so that architects, in performing their services, can have a tool which makes performing their services much easier and much more effective. But for us, we have to learn a whole different space. We have to learn that product space and get out of our, you know, service mindset.
Yeah, and which is hard, but
Yeah.
if you think about it, you're also helping architects make their services closer to a product, because the more you can have tools that just buy a tool and use it, the less you have to manually, put together a 3D model or something or
Well,
whatever.
for sure.
This applies to any product, right?
Yeah.
But I feel this is gonna happen, and there are even companies trying to replace architects altogether, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's happening. The change, I think it's gonna happen to architects as well, where their services are gonna be just the core of what they do, just pure design, and then the rest is just gonna be products they use, that will automate, I don't know, drawings, visualization, all that, right? Because it's not adding value to the design itself. It's just a way of communicating to the client.
Okay. Well, I have an idea about architecture that makes AI not so scary. Architects only design a small fraction of projects. Even in the United States, which is like so developed, and you'd expect that there would be an architect involved in any project that would call for an architect. Architects are only involved in 25% of the projects, and they're only involved in 1% of residential projects. So there's a huge market out there for architectural services if the architects can make their value affordable. And that's what tools are partly about, is to make your services more affordable. So there's so far to go, and AI can never replace the creativity and the connection that an architect has with a client. I do not think that they can do that.
Man, and I didn't know that number. I knew it was not high, but I didn't know it was 25%.
Globally.
That's insane. And 1% residential, that's even more crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so who's designing those things? So most of the housing that's not designed by architects is being designed by builders who are working, hopefully not entirely themselves. They may be working with somebody who's like an unlicensed designer. And we can debate about what the value of being an architect is compared to a designer. But let's give architects some credit, just like you give doctors credit for having passed their medical exams and you give lawyers credit for having passed the bar. Give architects some credit for having like earned an architecture degree and then passed the exam. And their products should be better. The outcome of their work should be better. And we look around at our environments, our cities, and we go, oh, this is like, it's so that. And I think that if architects were involved in more of it, say it wasn't 1% of houses, say it was 10%, and maybe it's not 25% of all buildings, but it's 50%. That's like a magnitude better than it is now. And I want to go
I
there.
think it's a technology. No, it makes sense, and I completely agree. I love it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a technology problem because as architects, most of your time you're not like in general, right? If you put all the architects in a bag, most of the times you're doing is not um, it's not related to design. It's more related to creating your drawings, selecting your materials,
Right.
like communicating with the architect, with the clients or with the engineers. And I do feel that once all those processes get automated, architects are gonna have more time to work on more projects, and it's gonna be that's my feeling.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have to waste time on things that are not adding value to the design. And once there are more architects available, then more projects will have architects. That's what I guess. I
Mhm.
think. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe dreaming.
So as a profession, compared to medicine or law, architects have that advantage, that opportunity, that open space to expand into.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't know that, so that's a great number. Um, by the way, I know you're a busy guy, so I don't want to take a lot more of your time. But before we wrap this up, can I ask you a couple of ping pong questions?
Please.
All right. What do you think it's the next big trend in the AC?
Mm. Well, I think that AEC is going to be more oriented towards prefabrication. I mean, this has been something that has been on the table for a long time, and a lot of people have tried to um, make it happen in their own way. And we've seen companies um, being launched and failed and so on. But I can say, looking around myself, my own city here, Berkeley, I see more and more prefabricated buildings going up. And it really applies to residential very well. Now, we don't need as much office space as we used to have. And so when we were building more office space, then it was a little bit harder to do that because then you'd have a bunch of walls inside and stuff, like you're building things out of shipping containers, sometimes literally. And they can be very big buildings, very complex. And they're building them here. And I think that there will be more of them. So talk about making architecture more affordable. That makes it a lot more affordable. And it starts to cross that line a little bit between service and product. And architects become more like product designers, where instead of just doing a custom product where there's one of them and it's copyrighted, you're doing a product which is replicated many times. And it's of much more value to society because a lot more people are going to benefit from it. Your little prefabricated housing unit is going to be enjoyed by really a lot of people. So that's the biggest trend that I see, and it's desperately needed.
I agree. I completely agree. The next one is, can you say a great AC software besides Geopogo?
Ah, is where I fight. Okay, let me think about that for a minute. Um, I've been very impressed by the progress that Test Fit has made. Test Fit started out laying out parking spaces in parking lots. What was the most what was the greatest number of parking spaces that you could cram into some irregularly shaped piece of land? That was the beginning. And it has become more and more developed so that now you're test fitting offices and you're test fitting um, apartment buildings. And you can instantly make tweaks and see how it works out. So I'm
Yeah,
really impressed by that.
Clifton and their team are doing a great work.
Yeah.
Um,
And I don't need to slay all the other great companies. They're like,
no, no, no. I mean, there are so many others, but it was just one. Um, and if you could collaborate with any person in history, which person would you choose?
Benjamin Franklin, someone from the
That's a
age of enlightenment who was very open minded, very observant of physics and nature, and willing to experiment.
yeah. He was a genius.
Yeah, he was a genius.
Absolutely.
And there are other, you could be,
He,
there are other ventures.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many others,
Yeah,
but
I like to pick
um,
and Franklin because he's not an architect at all. Whereas people think,
true,
oh yeah, Leonardo da Vinci was an architect.
true, true. And then last but not least, what's your favorite building in the? Which
Oh,
is your favorite building in the world, and have you ever visited?
okay. So I want to confess that I answered this question recently. So I'm just gonna give the same answer. It's not a building. It's a book. It's a mindset of design. And it's called Townscape by Gordon Culla. And it was written a long time ago. I think it was written in the 60s. And it had to do with the design of communities. It could be a neighborhood, it could be a city. Later on, you could say it's a little bit like pattern language. But the concept was what makes cities that we know, towns that we know, feel really great? What aids them in being pedestrian oriented? And how do we design those kind of vistas and experiences and landmarks and variety into new places that we design and build? I'm actually going to be leading a walking tour of a neighborhood in San Francisco called Mission Bay. Mission Bay is interesting because it was built on an old, huge land that was railroad yards and was very close to downtown. So there's real opportunity to develop that in sympathy with the rest of the city. So that it like works as an extension of the city. At the same time, it's doing things even better than the original city. And so I was poking around in it last weekend and I was really impressed by a lot of things that I saw there. Unfortunately, each building is much bigger than the buildings were in the original city. They're not on 25-foot wide lots or 40-foot wide lots or something. They're on like 150-foot long lots. So there's a little bit more of like fewer components and each one is bigger. But still, the open spaces and the scale of the streets and stuff and the vistas, like the landmarks, I mean,
Yeah,
it's really working. It's like townscape applied in reality. And that's what I like to say. So it's not a building, it's a way of design.
that's a great answer. It's a deep, deep, deep answer. And before we say goodbye to each other, can you tell everybody where they can know more about Geopogo or
Oh,
contact you as well?
oh, absolutely. Well, we have a website, and the name is spelled, I think, like it sounds, Geopogo. So you can just go to Geopogo, and it will answer all your questions.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks so much for your time, Dave. This was real fun and and it's great what you guys are doing. So yeah, thanks for being here, and I hope to see more about Geopogo in the future. All right.
Awesome. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, Valentine.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.